Greetings, my friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White. I'm so grateful to be here with you. I'm your host. I hope that you're having a wonderful new year, a wonderful start to your season. I pray that all kinds of doors open for you, all types of opportunities to help others. And so, with that said, I'm going to now go into some announcements. Gritty podcast with Dr. India White will be aired on Swain Girl Media Channel, featured, um, hosted by Precious Swain on Firestick. Also, if you're wanting to be featured on the show, please send me your email of a photo and a bio of you so that I can get you featured on the show at india.white.123@gmail.com. To follow me on social media, you can reach out to me on Facebook. It's Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238. YouTube is India White 123. And TikTok is Dr. India White, Dr. India White. Also, feel free to check out my website at www.india-white.com for blogs, books, to schedule me for an event, to schedule a free consultation meeting, whatever it is that you're needing to best service your community. I'm here for you. Now, I want to talk about grit again, and uh, I know that many of us are starting a new year, new semester. Welcome to the new semester for you principals and educators. So I want to talk with you and give you some tips about a fresh start through grit, how to motivate students from a fresh start through grit. Now, students are going to come back to you probably a little bit sluggish. Some of them coming back from vacation, spending much quality time, opening, Christmas presents or celebrating various holidays. So when you're keeping that in mind, please understand that yes, they are excited to be there, but I mean, some of them have really enjoyed themselves at this time off. So they'll be a little bit sluggish. They might not be as motivated. And so I wanted to come on here and provide some tips for you as to how you can motivate students through grit. Now, I found a really cool article by a Cengage blogger, professional author, speaker. Her name is Dr. Billy Bromer, and she is a professor of education at Brunel University. And so she provided 10 tips. I'm going to go back and forth from her article to just really highlighting those 10 tips that she's talked about with developing grit in students. So, with that said, the first tip, she really talks about Dr. Duckworth, and I'll share full article. She wrote this back in 2022 February, which is awesome. And she's talking about developing grit in students. And so she is saying her top 10 tips. It evolves from Dr. Duckworth's ideas. And she talks about many years of teaching non-traditional college students. Here she highlights Dr. Duckworth's definition of grit: passion and perseverance to obtain long-term goals. We will continue to say that until it sticks. She says here, grit is sticking with your future day in and day out until it's a reality. And so then she talks about how Dr. Duckworth's website incorporates the concept of grit into the concept of character, which is really powerful because when you think about it, sometimes students, they desire to have greater character, but they just don't have that motivation to build, and that takes grit. So she talks about 3 points here: strengths of will that include grit and self control, strengths of heart that include gratitude and kindness, and strengths of the mind that include curiosity and creativity. So I think that's pretty cool. So now she's going to now dive into her 10 ways, which are right here, which I will go over one by one with you. So talk about it. Let's talk about her tips for how to motivate students through grit. Now, tip one, she says, be a gritty role model for your students by sharing your own story of passion and perseverance. Now, I would say here that when you're sharing out, be vulnerable, be honest, but you don't have to share like your whole life story, but you can share bits and pieces that will get a student through. Students really like to hear about their students in their lives. They really do. Um, but of course, understanding there's limits and boundaries as to how to do that is key. So share your own story about how you had some type of rut, some kind of situation that, you thought was going to kind of cave in your life, but then you were able to bounce back through resilience and grit. and here you are today. Students get motivated by stuff like that. And then, of course, you could spin it onto them and then tell them, and you have the same potential to do the same. Tip two, find something unique in all of your students so you can help them build on their strengths. Now, when you're talking about uniqueness, I think you should also highlight any culture, any linguistic cool features, any unique things that they're a part of in the community. Are they in any extracurricular activities? Do they have a talent? Do they have a gift? Do they sing? Do they play a sport? Do they know how to do hair already. Like some teenagers might, be into cosmetology. What do they do? Do they skateboard? Do they have a really big following on social media, whether that's TikTok, Snapchat, or YouTube, whatever? Highlight those things and celebrate that in your classes. The point of celebrating those is to then tell them, hey, I see that you do have grit and you've been amazing at what you've accomplished. Now let's take that and let's apply those same strategies, that same work ethic that you've done towards those things that you love, and we're going to pour that now into our class. So that is a way that you can shift their passion towards your class, because their passion, I mean, day to day, you only have so much energy, so much passion. So how do you then shift it? Well, of course, you can, hook them with what they're already good at and then have them apply that same passion, those same skills to your classroom. Now, tip number three, hesitate to tell them what their unique superpower may be. It could be one thing that keeps them going when the going gets tough. So you could tell them, hey, I know that you're really resilient. Hey, you've been a great listener and you always provide wonderful reasoning whenever we're in discussion. Or, hey, I really like how if you're in a math class, you were factoring that, like you're really good at figuring those things out. Like you barely need a calculator. Like you've really been showing that you're amazing in that. Like those are some things that you can do to kind of build your students, motivate them, and let them see that you're really cheering them on. Number four, make asking questions an expected part of your course so students know they aren't the only ones asking. This is powerful. And I want to extend that. Not only making sure that they're not the only ones asking, making sure that all students' voices are heard, because it's imperative that students are being built up, the student voice is being built up so that they know that they are a key pivotal part to the learning environment. Their voice is needed, their ideas are needed, their experiences are needed when they bring those to the table. Now, tip number five, she says to create many opportunities for success through low stake assessments or through low stake assignments, especially in an early like this, because I really like this because this is your way of boosting their spirits at the earlier part of the course, which builds their confidence. Which, when they start climbing and start doing more in your class, and they're really going to feel like they're super successful when the going gets tough and they have to use more rigor and have deeper levels of discourse in the class. That's what's really going to build them, is to know that earlier on they built a foundation where they were seen as competent, successful, and able to do, whether it's the math or able to read or whatever the content is in your class. So, with that said, I'm going to now go back to her article and we'll continue to look at the next steps that she placed in there for us to see, like, what else do you need to do when it comes down to developing grit in students. So if you look at my screen here, so she says in tip number 6, she says, be caring. Some students really do have recurring crises in their lives. And so this is pretty powerful because, some people will say, oh, they should still be able to do whatever it is that I assign them to do. Like, I'm not going to feel bad for them. I'm not going to listen to their excuses. But the honest truth is that many people deal with crises and deal with life differently. We don't know how a student, that is dealing with grief, how that grief is going to affect them. We don't know how some people are going to bounce back, They're not, some aren't as tough as others, but that doesn't mean that they don't have resilience. That doesn't mean that they can't be great and go on and be successful and overcome through grit. But at the same time, they do need a lens of empathy where we look at their situation in an empathetic approach, and we're compassionate enough to say, you know what, I'm going to slow down enough and I'm going to consider, and I'm going to really believe that this really was traumatic, or that this really affected you like you said it did, and I'm going to, make adjustments and accommodations to best support you as you're getting through that hard time. So that's what you want to do when you're trying to really help students that are dealing with crises. I would say also make sure that you're coupling together with school psychologists, guidance counselors, administration that have a good relationship, with the students, and that, these people that you're bringing from the leadership team, that the student can be vulnerable with and the student can trust, along with their family, and, their parents and guardians. I think it's key that you do what you can to kind of get everybody on board to support that student through those trying times. Now, the next tip number 7, she says, give second chances. Do you really want a student's best work and not just the work that met a deadline? So this right here is pretty powerful. And I think that leaders and educators have to understand it's not always about the deadline, and it's not about that gotcha feeling of, yes, gotcha. I said it's due this day. You didn't turn it in. Oh well, gotcha. Like, it should be more of a, I'm here to assist you so that you can convince us that you are proficient in this subject area. So then that means that if you do need some extra time, then we need to work out a plan. Now that doesn't mean that you give students opportunities to run all over that plan a million times, but work out a plan, communicate with parents or guardians, and then see that you assist that child towards proficiency, towards their best work, whenever you see that they're in a pickle and they need another chance. Next tip number 8, she says, highlight small succession, highlight small successes, and pay less attention to failures. You know, I think this is key for every student that we are developing and we're cultivating grit in, and we're cultivating character in, because if they feel that all we harp on is is their failures, then chances of them wanting to come to our class is slim to none. Chances of them believing in themselves and having a strong sense of self-efficacy, slim to none. Students have to understand that in the midst of their failures and their low moments, there is a lot to be celebrated, and that they have accomplished so much. So I want to encourage you, if you're in the classroom, with students and you're working with them and you're developing that grit, be intentional at celebrating those small successes. So my question to you is this: what do you have in place right now to celebrate success of students? Just think about it. Do you have a classroom system? Do you have a PBIS system, ticket system, a money system? Do you have rewards? Or is it just verbal? Good job. Keep it up. Like, what do you do to help build grit? Do you have something that students can work toward? I highly recommend that if you don't have some type of classroom management system, that you should get one in place, because it's order, it's organization, and it's just a way to communicate that everybody's on board. So there's not all of these, fires that you have to put out, and all these unexpected situations that'll occur in your class. I highly recommend that you do what you can to pursue some type of system for all of your students, so that they can be successful and really have something to work towards in the class. And then also, if you're giving that verbal praise, maybe you can write a note home to parent or guardian. Maybe you can have the administration make an announcement praising your students. Maybe you can do something. I don't know if this, and if you're a principal, I don't know if you guys highlight student of the week or whatever, or you have a student of the week per grade level, and you can make an announcement over the intercom. Hey, we want to highlight this student of the week from math, from English, from science, from social studies, and you can highlight those students of the week, and then continue to build that praise and that sense of celebration for all of your students. I think it's a great idea that you can build for your school, because it helps with your morale. It helps, with the motivation. It helps with everything with the students. So Let's go back to the next thing she said you can do. Tip number 9 to build grit. She said encourage rational thought and your students when their emotions creep in. Failing an exam may be lousy or may feel lousy, but it may not mean it's all over for the course. Tell them. This is so imperative, especially when a student first fails an exam. It's a horrible feeling. So, to help them bounce back, that last part where she says, it may not mean it's all over for the course. That is everything because students, they can tend to run to extreme ends of conclusions and assumptions whenever something goes awry. So, you know, I can remember failing a math test. Um, and oh my gosh, I cried and cried and cried. Woe is me. I mean, I was depressed for days. I was beating myself up. How could I do this? But then I had to bounce back and, talking to my support group, they let me know, hey, you still have another couple of tests to go. And thank goodness I passed the class. But sense of shame and lack of motivation and about to give up hope was there. So I can't imagine how our children and our students are also being impacted by failing a test. This is important. I want to say something. If a student fails your test, I think if a test is failed, there needs to be so much communication as to how students can move forward. If a student failed your test, for instance, with a 46%, and you just put 46% in red pen at the top of the paper, and that's it, there's no follow up, there's no plan as to how they can, maybe you can reteach, or maybe they can review, maybe they can make up some points or quizzes. What are we doing? What are we doing? Because I'm telling you, if you are doing this and you're just doing the blatant, there's the percentage amount, I've got to move on with the next thing. That is it can be very detrimental to a student's mental health, emotional health, and their belief in themselves and their ability to move forward in your class. I highly recommend that if a student is failing, that you really follow up with a plan as to how they can be successful in your class. And I also want to say that if you really are doing your job as an educator, you really should have that conversation anyways because you're building relationships with students, healthy relationships. So you should be able to tell them, hey, this is where you went awry and I'm here to support you. I know you got a 46, but hey, I'm going to put a plan together that within this week you can make up those questions, but I need your exam by Friday. Today's Monday. I need it by Friday with those questions made up. Whatever your plan is, it needs to be something so students know that it's not the end of the rope and that you really are advocating for them. I really am against just putting the failed number on the top of the exam with no explanation. I just that's kind of I think it's something we should avoid. I think we should definitely focus on communicating better with parents and guardians and students. Because at the end of the day, student fails the test. Is that really a reflection of them, or is that a reflection of how we are as educators? Did we not really teach them? And that is a whole nother thing. That if it's our teaching style, then I don't know that I would take such praise in a 46%, right? So I would do what I can to see that I can help these students make up and really understand the learning. Because at the end of the day, I am here to help them to become proficient. It's not a gotcha. It's not a oh he failed oh well. It's no. It's my job as an educator is to really build and develop these children, and whether that's through grit and motivating them, but I also think through second chances, like this professor said, is key. So we have to keep those things in mind as we're educating our students. Now, the last one, tip 10, she says, couple high expectations with full support. This doesn't mean changing the rules, but it could mean a bit more flexible. Flexible. It could mean being a bit more flexible about them. So I like this because yes, the rules are here in black and white, but I might have to advocate. I might have to accommodate. Something might have happened in our, student situation. It's it reminds me of, thank goodness I had a wonderful math teacher that understood that when I was in high school. That when my brother passed away on the day that I had to take her exam, um, that she didn't just say, "Oh well, sit down. Here's exam. Figure it out." But that she actually was very supportive and actually gave me time to say, "Okay, you go handle that. When you come back, we'll handle this." Things are going to happen in our students' lives. What are we going to do to accommodate them? We have to accommodate them. This isn't us just giving students an excuse, to not perform at their best. But this is saying, hey, these are my high expectations, but I also understand that you had this going on in your life. So I am going to accommodate for you, work out a plan. We're going to negotiate together so that we can make sure that you be successful despite what you're going through. Okay. So then once you do that, then you follow through on your end and then you praise that student as they're starting to perform. But at the end of the day, just make it to where that student can understand this this teacher gave me another chance. This teacher worked with me. If we're not working with our students, what are we doing? What are we doing? So I want to encourage you to continue to develop great. This was a great article, and I'm so happy I stumbled across it, and I really was happy to see that it was, um, a wonderful article from Cengage, represent Cengage, represent. So I just thought that this was great. And, you guys need to go check out Cengage Learning if you haven't had a chance. Represent. I'm so happy to be a part of that team. Um, but yeah, so this is a really cool article on developing grit. Check out Dr. Duckworth's Character Lab. Check out Dr. Uh, Bill Billy Bromer. Check out her work as well. Giving her a shout out. Thank you, Dr. Billy Bromer. And I can tell you that your students, they want to perform for you. They want to be the best for you. They really do. Nobody wants. Think about your own life. Nobody wants to go to a job or go into school, go into a course and say, "I pulled all Fs." Yes. Nobody wants to do that. So keeping that in mind, let's do what we can to develop grit in our students and to lead them all the way through. So thanks so much for letting me share about my situations and sharing this article with you. With that said, I'm going to now remind you again of this show announcement. So the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White will be featured on Swain Girl Media, hosted by Precious Swain on Firestick. Also, feel free to follow me at on Facebook, Miss India White, and LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238. YouTube is India White123. And TikTok is Dr. India White. I want to also give a shout out to the IAFOR conference in Hawaii. I will be speaking here um, tomorrow. So I'm super excited to join these professors and educators from across the globe. I will be talking about cross cultural communication, interhumanism, bridging the achievement gap, equitable practices, because that is what I love. So, wish us luck when we are over here doing this great work. It's my prayer that we can all take some nuggets and close the achievement gap together. Now, I want to also remind you to please, please, please check out my website, www.india-white.com, for blogs, books, and to schedule me for your next speaking or coaching event. The calendar is filling up, so please get with me when you can. I'm super excited about various conferences that I'll be joining you guys throughout the year, various keynotes that have already come through. Thank you to all of you for those opportunities. I can't wait to connect with you in these various spaces of education. And so, with that said, I also wanted to just remind you that if you're needing anything from me, I am here for you. If I don't get to you, just understand I will get to you. Just this week in particular, I'm really focused on how can I best serve these wonderful leaders across the globe with what I know on equitable practices and I don't know if you guys feel that weight of that responsibility, but I really have a heaviness, in a good way, though, of really helping to close the achievement gap because I want all learners to be successful. I can't sleep well when I think of the fact that it's going to take hundreds of years to close the achievement gap. We've got to do something. We've got to do it quicker than we expected to do. And so, with that said, I think that all of us joining together on platforms like these is key, and really putting each other in appropriate spaces so that our gifts can show and our talent and our ethic and our expertise can be appreciated and valued is key. So, with that said, thank you to all of you for tuning in. I'm looking forward to connecting with you again. Till next time, stay gritty.